Hey there, this is Pete Townsend from Norio Ventures, and welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's fintech and financial services recruitment specialists, Top Tier Recruitment. If you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, it is highly advisable that you build a relationship with the team at Top Tier Recruitment. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. This week, we talked to Garrett Cassidy from Trezeo, a fintech on a mission to help independent workers with their financial lives by providing them with a comprehensive safety net delivered 100% digitally. As Garrett said recently on a Future of Work interview series for Aperture, Trezeo is not a social enterprise. It is a for-profit, investor-backed enterprise. But that doesn't mean that you can't make money from doing the right thing. That's where technology changes things fundamentally. I met Garrett back in 2014 when he came into my office talking excitedly about startups and pre-accelerators. I look back at that meeting as one of the reasons that I'm doing what I do. So thanks, pal. Let's just get on with the rest of the story with Garrett Cassidy on this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again. Welcome to Money Never Sleeps. We're recording today from the home studio, and we're on with Garrett Cassidy, co-founder and CEO of Trezeo. We're an Irish company, but going to market in the UK, providing a unique range of financial services and protection products for independent workers. Welcome to the show, Garrett.
Thanks, Pete. Great to be on.
Awesome, beyond. We go way back, don't we?
We do, from what it must be 4, 5, 6 years ago at least. Time flies, though.
I think it was longer.
Probably longer.
You were the guy that came into my BNP office, didn't you, talking about the NDRC initiative with corporates.
That's right, probably, yes. Yes.
And that's when we first met. And that was on behalf of Gary Layden.
That was, yes. That would have been, 2013, 2014, probably. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the first chats that got me thinking about the startup space. Yeah. So, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. So
it's all my fault is what you're saying, Pete.
It is. Everyone, and my wife thanks you, which is wonderful. But you founded Trezeo with Flavian Charlon in March of 2016, right?
Yeah.
Did I say his name right?
Yeah, Flavian. Yeah, Charlon. Yeah.
Very good. And how are you doing today anyway?
Yeah, we're good. It's we're in the midst of a very interesting time with COVID Corona. Getting through it. More importantly, we're trying to support kind of our early customers and members through it. They're right at the front line of the challenges. So it's really brought to home what we're even further what we've been trying to do, and really want to use the crisis as a catalyst to try and change things coming out. So people can actually have some better protections. Pandemic is a pandemic, but the issues about people getting sick and not being able to work happen every day.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And it's like, I was talking to Dara Lawler just earlier today about this theory that with the Army or any military service, the training program lasts 12 weeks because that's how long it takes to change someone's behavior. And how long have we been going through all of this with these massive behavior changes is 12 weeks. So does that then mean these changes have become indoctrinated into our personas and this is just how life will go? And if that means that it's become fully digital, then are we really going to go back?
It's hard to know. I was on a call just before this, and that was part of the conversation. And one of the interesting things that was said was, actually, quite a lot of people who are older are actually looking at the benefits of working from home and the flexibility. And one of the people who was speaking said they've talked to younger people, and they're the ones who are actually really struggling without the connection, without the social connection, etc., and want to get back to offices. So, which almost sounds illogical. It's almost the wrong way round. But people who were maybe not as comfortable with the technology previously have realized what the technology can do. But maybe it's they have their more set social circles, etc. But the younger people, newer to work, more sociable, while they're comfortable in technology, also want the social interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Owen Fitzgerald and I were talking about this last week, and that all those wonderful perks you get from working for one of the big tech companies by the wonderful offices and all the food and the massages and beanbags and whatever, that kind of goes away when you're working from home, But anyway, listen, let's dig in. Yeah. I wanted to get into your backstory, which is quite interesting. And in prepping for this, Garrett, I went back through LinkedIn, had a look at your history, and I knew some of your history just because we go back a while. But what's really interesting is this real B2B flavor to your background, for lack of a better word. Yeah. And just to see you so much into the B2C space, even though it's kind of like B2C and a half, or half of it could be because it's focused on workers, right? Is just really, really interesting. But, holding all that aside, tell us your backstory and how you got to this point.
Yeah, I'll start where it starts. So I went to school in Lucan. For those who aren't from Dublin, it's one of the suburbs in West Dublin, which is kind of now attached to Dublin. To be honest, I was probably always into something, making, building. My parents would probably say I was always breaking things. So it was always just kind of in my nature. It was young scientist competition a number of times, and then I went and studied computer science at Trinity. So yeah, I'm kind of officially a nerd underneath.
Okay. Yeah. I saw you did at Trinity, you did voice over IP in 1994.
Yeah, I built an early version of what would probably now be described as Skype. Unfortunately, it was in 1994 and I didn't make the 4 billion out of it.
No, boy. Missed opportunities, right?
Yeah, so my final year project was basically a voice over IP phone system, a bit like it's a very, very early version. The internet in a usable way was just getting going. So yeah, that was an interest. So I was a proper techie. Met my wife Olivera on a night out in the buttery, and she still puts up with me.
Nice.
So I started my career in London as a techie in Goldman Sachs, and obviously lots of things said about that, but actually I was a great experience. And really the key thing it taught me was the importance of asking questions. Always ask. There is no stupid question, and really that it kind of even further embedded the kind of inquisitive nature in my mind. Came back to Dublin, worked for Ulster Bank, actually then worked for a while at Marrakesh, who were not in Morocco. When I went to go there, some people said, "You're going to Morocco." It was an Irish startup in the early noughties, which was so rode through some of the .com fun, and then went to Bank of Ireland when the .com came, and I was there for a long time. Moved around a lot, from global markets to finance to IT to strategy, and a lot of everything during the financial crisis. And somewhere along the way, I got an MBA. So
yeah, I saw that, and that's where as well you spent some time working with Dennis Donovan.
Yes. So Dennis was CEO of the global markets business when I joined. So a couple of steps up the ladder. Would have known him a bit, and then more later in my career in the bank, when I was working on some of the more kind of strategic projects, would have been much closer to Dennis. He would have been divisional head in capital markets. So would always have been kind of reasonably close, and then got close towards the end of my time in Bank of Ireland. Then after I left, we kind of stayed in touch. He retired probably a couple of months after I left. And yeah, he's been a kind of a great mentor then over the last couple of years.
You had introduced me to him at one point back in 2016, and he and I had a good chat, and he kind of injected me full of some ambition for the wider global financial markets becoming digital, which was really interesting. So thank you for connecting.
Yeah, so Dennis is our chairman. Is our chairman at Trezeo as well. So he's come full circle, and has stayed he was a very close advisor and kind of mentor, and then has come on as our chairman. So I learned a huge amount at Bank of Ireland. Was there a long time, and really particularly on the business side, moved into a lot of business roles and more operational roles. And most people wouldn't have realized I was an IT person, kind of tech person by the end of it. But it was kind of time. I was overdue a change at the end of the crisis. I took some time off to get myself back into kind of tech and fintech at the time. And as you said, that's when we met. Ended up doing some work with NDRC on an early fintech program that they did back in 2014. So I was out and about meeting lots of people in the industry, trying to get them engaged into the program and bring that kind of financial services side to the program. They're obviously well experienced on the startup side, and they really wanted to meld the kind of tech and the startup together. So that was really interesting. Great, basically deep dip into the startup community, being right at the heart of it. Was working with them for 3 or 4 months on the program, but being right at the heart of the kind of community, etc. And then I spent a year at Circle, deep in the crypto world.
Yep.
building up the kind of first office in Dublin, kind of really working on, to be honest, a bit of everything from policy around crypto to product to building the early team. And, which was great. I mean, crypto for me, when I saw it first, as you said, I come from, based on that telecoms example, I came from a really deep tech distributed systems, which is, and I'm not a cryptographer, but cryptography would always been close to it.
Sure.
And therefore the combination of the stuff that crypto and Bitcoin brought and the financial side of it and financial markets was just really intriguing. And then after Circle, I had the bug to try and do a startup if we had the right idea, and worked on some ideas kind of 2015, early 2016. And then, early 2016, mid 2016, myself and Flavian got together and started to work on what ultimately became Trezeo. I mean, Flavian was, he's much deeper in crypto than I am. So he'd written some of the early crypto protocols. So that's how we knew each other. And then that's kind of how we ended up in Trezeo, and that's 4 years ago now, which is time flies.
Amazing. And I saw that you spent a bit of time as an advisor with Anthemis Group, who are a venture capital firm. Did that create some influence in terms of your direction?
Not really. I did on and off. I did bits of work with them, helped them with some intros, and it was really more a network. I didn't do a huge amount.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, they were big influence in terms of their approach to fintech back in those early days. Knew a few of the people there pretty well. So in terms of just broadly, but I probably did some work with them, but not massive. I did a few other pieces along the way as well, just keeping things ticking over. And to be honest, it was more having gone into Circle, which was a startup but a very well funded one. I got the transition from the kind of large organization, how corporate do things, into that startup environment, and then having started working on other ideas. And to be honest, you also rebootstrapped my own kind of tech background back to what the kind of startup one was. So made myself got more comfortable with that kind of environment. And then, just, with the right idea, we felt we'd, really had something that we could go after.
Okay. All right. I get it. And tell us, what is Trezeo, right? And why are you, of all people in the world, doing this?
So the vision and mission is pretty simple. It's not necessarily that easy to pull off. So it's really quite fundamental. Very simply, it's about inclusive financial safety net. So it's about for independent, self-employed workers. So it's a world where people aren't choosing their financial security and trading their financial security because they want to work flexibly, because they don't have a traditional employer. So it is as simple as that of, just because you don't work with an employer and work a different way, why should you have such a radically different protection around you, access to financial services, and just all of that stuff? So simple idea, but actually a really, really gnarly set of problems to try and solve. Because put quite simply, the traditional industry just doesn't really know how to deal with self-employed. They don't fit in any of the traditional boxes, and the safety net, for want of a better word, wasn't built thinking about them. It was built thinking about large-scale factory workers originally, but then obviously that transitions into office workers quite nicely. But all a concept where there's an employer who is actually providing a lot of the, some cases structure, in some cases funding, but actually fundamentally structure that kind of structures how things work. So it's kind of trying to solve that problem.
You and Flavian got together and said, listen, we know that the two of us together could probably come up with something worth building, and that you had a look around and thought about different problems to solve? Or was it that this was something that you guys kind of identified either individually or together and said, let's just go for this?
It was a bit of both. So we actually started looking at better banking, financial services for micro businesses. So that was the one that actually really triggered initially. So better bank account, if you want to think of it that way. But actually it was a combination of early customer research and other independent research that hit at the time that made us realize there was as we drilled into micro business and into sharing economy and gig economy and self-employed, we realized there was just a much more important and bigger problem to solve, and it wasn't a better bank account. While there's an account in our solution, that's not the core of it. So it was really that. and that it needed just a very fundamentally different approach to effectively create a new category of services. And then as we kept digging, some of it, startups, so some of it was, we were getting strange responses that didn't really make sense when we were doing some of the early customer research, and we just kept digging, kept asking. And then eventually a combination of some of that early customer research, as I said, some industry kind of market research that landed, made us, the penny dropped at a particular point. And then we realized the kind of the overall piece we were trying to solve. And then we kind of worked on navigating where to start, basically.
Okay, I get that. And if you were in any way involved in the Dublin startup ecosystem in 2014, 2015, 2016, one of the biggest pain points and headaches that I know that anyone talked about in the startup space was just was getting a bank account.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was one of the big topics. So it sounds like what you're saying is it just kind of built on from there and said, well, there are deeper problems beyond this to solve.
Yeah. So it was exactly that. It was kind of bank accounts are broken, which, but actually it was, you're right. It was when we focused in on where it was with the people we were trying to solve it for, we realized actually bank accounts weren't as broken for them because they really didn't care. So most self-employed and independent workers don't have a separate bank account for their business. So it's not a big pain. Yes, they should have and all of that, but it's not a particular pain point they think about. Or if they do, because they're a sole trader, while we might give out about the banks, it's not that hard to open a sole trader account. It's opening limited companies accounts and things like that are more challenging. So it was actually in that, kind of keeping a broad mindset of trying to work out trying to validate the problem that actually brought us to, we're actually looking at the wrong thing here. Right customer kind of, right kind of broad, there are problems here, but actually it brought us to a slightly different outcome as to what the problems were.
Okay. And how did you feel about, starting to build a business based upon individual users buying a product versus kind of a distribution out through, a B2B2C channel?
So that's the piece I think people probably miss, is we always had B2B2C channel in our radar. So that was always, somebody asked me reasonably recently when we talk about our kind of multi-channel approach. It's not necessarily a nice word said in the fintech world, but our kind of multiple sales approach. And they asked, was this something you always thought about? We can take them back to slides from 3 or 4 years ago. Yes, we talked very early on to cab companies and some of the modern platforms around their challenges as well. So it was always, I'm not saying we had it all worked out, but it was always, we knew we were going to have to do some of the direct and consumer piece small business consumer piece, but that was always going to have to be worked through to bring scale through partners and platforms and other kind of ecosystem players. But also, you said about my background in kind of B2B, a lot of that was actually in engaging services. So when we look the other side, I've got a lot of experience of working with third parties, product providers, tech providers, etc. So that so we've kind of brought together quite a complex ecosystem solution.
I get it. That's really cool, actually, thinking about your experience in that with all of those programs and projects you used to manage in terms of getting new platforms in place within the financial services industry, that there is a natural job to be done, which is making sure that the end user has the right experience, right? Yeah. But you're executing that through big projects at a corporate level.
Yeah. And
okay.
Yeah. So us, probably the biggest challenge in those early days was some of that customer research, because we didn't come from that space. So and as an early stage startup, you just have to do it. The conversations with the companies were a bit, in some respects, we're a little more comfortable, even though they're actually harder, because you really are going to them you're really just going in research mode, asking questions, and we got to a point where we were kind of testing hypotheses back on some of the companies that effectively employ or engage these workers, to basically to test our thoughts on our view of the market with them, because they obviously would have quite a broad view of workers. And got a lot of positive validation from that. Obviously, it takes a lot of time then to build a solution that they can work with. So it's a blend. Our end members, our end workers, but actually our route to scale is working with others, because that's kind of just the nature of the market, and it influenced where we started and who, the sector we started in terms of looking at, did it have that kind of intermediary structure that you could actually leverage.
I gotcha. That makes sense. And over the last couple of years, probably 3 years, and given that it takes at least 9 to 12 months to at least start thinking about entering a market, has there been a moment that you can recall where you're like, wow, okay, this is going to work. This is definitely worth doing?
As a startup founder, you ask yourself that question every day of the week.
Yeah, I bet. What was it? Did I miss it? Has it happened already, or is it never going to happen?
Yeah. So I mean, there's probably two parts to that. There's the, have we hit on something that, so is there a problem there? Absolutely, yes, there is a problem there. There isn't solutions there there aren't necessarily solutions there. And it's the big question you ask yourself is, have you gotten the right solution as you iterate and work with early customers, etc. I suppose that the other thing that really came out, which people now would think we started that way, but I don't want to. We won't try and rewrite history. So our business has, is having an impact and has potential to have a massive positive impact on people. And that, that's what probably came out and caught us as well. Probably a year, 18 months in, as people started saying to us about how financially inclusive our solution was, and how much good it could do.
Yep.
It wasn't that we were coming in at it from any malice point. We just, people, and it's an important point, because people assume that if you're doing something with impact, well, you've probably started out, your intention was impact. Our intention was to solve a problem.
Yep.
It turns out, and probably what got us interested in it most probably was the fact that there was an impact. We probably just didn't think of it that way. But then, as more and more people have said it, we've had a huge amount of support from that angle, and there's a lot there can be it's lessening, but there can be a stigma around it sometimes. People think it's just about social entrepreneurship, but it's not. There are more and more funds and investors and supports that want to support commercial businesses, because our ambition is to impact as many people as we can. That's hopefully in due course tens or hundreds of millions of people to actually improve their lives. We can only do that if we have a very scalable commercial business that sustains itself, and that's the kind of effectively positive flywheel we're trying to create. But getting through that financial inclusion and inclusive pieces here from when I introduced is now right at the core of our DNA, in terms of as a company, as how we go after things. And it's kind of hard not to, when you hear some of the stories of our early users, they're just heartbreaking. And in the midst of COVID, it's impossible not to, because we've got people just making absolutely impossible choices.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting, because sometimes when we ask that question to some of our other guests, we get the response on, well, when I signed that first big deal, right? Or when we were able to get our first round of funding closed and we were able to expand the team and bring on some incredible people. And that, with you being so linked to such a purpose-driven ideal, that you're getting the true satisfaction there, really, it sounds like, as a founder, from just the fact that your product is working with the target market that you intended for it to work for and making a difference in their lives.
Yeah, and that wasn't really it wasn't necessarily how we thought about it in day one, but actually it certainly motivates the team, but it's hard not to, because as we continued with research, particularly in the UK, particularly as we got stuck into the UK, some of the stories from some of the people we talked to were just, they're heart-wrenching, in terms of how close people are to the edge and how unsupported and unprotected they are. So then when you actually, we have a couple of videos from some of our early members, and the stories some of them tell are just, to be honest with you, you can't but think about, how do we make this better? How do you find more ways of helping people? And I said, COVID is just really, really brought it home. And one of the things I say is, in fairness, Ireland has done an okay job on this, because these self-employed were included in the pandemic payment. They were included in sick pay, but that didn't happen in the UK. So we've had a scenario where huge number of self-employed and gig workers are doing essential and frontline services, and they're expected. We expect them to go to work and they're completely on their own if it goes wrong. And what's even worse, and this was one of the key challenges in the early stage of COVID, is a lot of these people would work through sickness because they've got no choice. They have a choice of work or not get work, or put money on the table, put food on the table. And so we left them with an absolutely impossible choice of do the right thing and don't get paid. So, I mean, one of the things we did very early on, we were in the process of launching a product edition around sickness protection and some other bits. In early March, as this came, we made the decision to actually give sickness insurance to all of our members, just for the worst of the crisis, because they couldn't buy it at the time. So we just made it was the right thing to do at the right time, so that at least they could have some comfort that if something went wrong, they might have something behind them. Where the early customers we have are in that predominantly in the delivery space. We're about to do a large project in the home care and social care space. So, delivery workers, we think of them as, students on bikes, but these guys have professional careers, riding motorbikes, delivering food or packages or whatever, and they've worked right through the crisis. I think we've had a front row seat to their challenges, and how that's kind of evolved, and how their work levels are evolving, and how many of them have actually had to stop working at some point or another for whatever reason, whether it be self-isolation, small number got sick, and some of them there was a period where the work just wasn't there.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, you're touching on a really important point there in terms of how tough it is to go through all this, and that when you think about people on the front line performing these service roles, yeah, it's incredibly challenging to keep going through all this, and especially when you're your own boss, right? You're the one that gets you out of the bed in the morning, right? You're the one that needs to keep things going and keep the inertia moving on your business. So although the challenges faced by entrepreneurs at the tech level are obviously much different than independent workers and those in the gig economy, but you posted recently, Garrett, on LinkedIn, a wonderful 4-part video series on mental health in entrepreneurship, produced by Techstars. I watched it and loved it. Made me a lot more mindful about how I do things. What impact did it have on you?
It's probably just that, we put people on pedestals. So Brad Feld would be a good example there. I had no idea of that. I mean, I know of Brad. I don't know him, but he's a bit of an icon in the kind of startup world. And we put people on these pedestals, and then you realize everybody's human. No matter how successful people appear, there's mental health challenges can be there, and we just need to talk about it more. It is a challenge in startup community. It's a challenge in lots of pieces. A lot of what we do on the financial side in Trezeo is about trying to lessen some of the mental challenges of finance. But I suppose it's fundamental. Building a startup is really hard. And people don't like to talk. I know we all throw the failure word out there. People don't like to talk about it, but startup founder, you fail constantly, small and big ways, every day.
Yep.
You're knocked back day in, day out. And you're always questioning whether you're on the right path, experimenting different approaches. On the surface, it can all look very flashy and nice, but underneath there's a lot going on. So and that can be really hard. And it's also very hard to put pressure on yourself. Lots of people have put faith in you, investors, mentors, etc. And it's natural human desire not to let people down. So it's just it can become a real pressure cooker. And it's finding those outlets that's important. And I think that's what some of the videos really did show. There's, three very different examples. And then there was for those who haven't seen, there was a video then from more professionals about the signs and what to do. But I think it's that Techstars piece, from talking to some of the people in Techstars, it was coming anyway, but it was just of the time that, increasing the focus on mental health. We know we need more diversity in this kind of startup community, but the lack of diversity there amplifies it as well, because we all know men are less likely to raise their hand. So it's simple. I mean, thing I just try is you've got to celebrate the wins, but you've also got to recognize that the thing, you so startup plan can be such a seesaw from incredible highs to incredible lows on the same day sometimes. So you've got to try not to take it personally.
Keep that even keel.
You've just got to. It's hard. And you've got people relying on you. I said, whether it's investors, employees, etc. And you're trying to solve things for customers as well. So it is hard. And I suppose the thing I would more take now is just putting stuff out there to make people realize it's okay.
Exactly.
It's okay to not have all the answers, to have challenges, and to ask for help. And we're probably worse on it on this side of the Atlantic. There's a much bigger stigma to having a psychiatrist or whatever in Europe than there would be in the US. So it is one we've all just got to be very conscious of, and keep an eye. And I know quite a number of people say in the Irish startup ecosystem who are very passionate about it and trying to work out how to improve things, and just give founders a way to talk. Some of it can just be as simple as talking to other founders. And just ranting sometimes.
I know.
Venting.
I know. That's all it takes sometimes. And I've just thinking about that pressure cooker, right? And that these small, manageable mental conditions, whatever you want to call them, that every individual has in some way, shape, or form, because nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's a robot. That all of these things can become completely exacerbated when you're in the pressure cooker, right? And who knows what they may be. And in Brad Feld, in all seriousness, he talked about OCD, right? And how that actually unfurled and became an issue for him, just being in the pressure cooker. And that's totally understandable, right? But it's like, you just don't know. And we've quoted on this podcast before, Ben Horowitz, right, or Mark Andreessen, either one of them said something to the effect of, with startups, there's two emotions, euphoria and terror. And lack of sleep enhances both feelings, right? And so what I'm thinking, Garrett, and here's something for you. Just like Trezeo does income smoothing, see if we can do emotion smoothing for founders.
No, I mean, it is a challenge. And I mean, sometimes you flippantly, and the investor one's the obvious one, but actually you get yourself in the right mindset and that you kind of get used to it. But it's sometimes it's the smallest things that can throw you, not the one you expect. And it's just, and it'll come at you and smack you in the face, and you'll wonder, why the hell did that come from? And it's, you just, you sometimes you just have to get up, close the laptop, and go for a walk. It's hard. But yeah, it's tough, and if it wasn't, the problems wouldn't be there. Somebody would have solved them. So yeah,
exactly.
It makes even the small moments where some of our members have real positivity and kind of come to us and go, you know what, I just got my first mainstream credit. I've never been able to get it before. That's one of our customers. It's just those little ones which you realize, in the industry and how big it is. Oh, that's just one person. But actually, it's creating that piece of, can we do this again and again and again and again? And that's where actually impact stuff helps, because you're not just targeting some cold, and I know nobody really is, but it makes it even more real. And I said, COVID has brought that kind of challenge of almost the pressure that we look at ourselves and go, we wish we could do more now. But what we're trying to do is position ourselves so we can try and make sure things are different after. Now, there is no way Trezeo or any solution is built for a pandemic. But the key thing is that these issues happen on a smaller scale day in, day out. And
absolutely,
while the pandemic has brought a lot to light, it's also made an opportunity to go, okay, it's time for a change. And I think there is as you said, the 12-week piece, we've got new behaviours. We're involved now in a UK, it's government sponsored, but it's a thing called the Inclusive Economy Partnership. And while it's nothing directly related to COVID, on the very first call, because COVID had happened, one of the comments was, society has just been absolutely rocked to its foundations. and this is my own language, but effectively Humpty Dumpty needs to be put back together again. Let's put it back together the right way. And that was kind of coming, and therefore the timing of the initiative, it's quite a broad thing. We're just one small part of it, was how can we more inclusively start to think about it as we rebuild things, and think about the lessons that we're learning. We won't get it all right, but there's a lot of challenges, but that's what we want to try and prepare ourselves for. So we've got solutions for the larger companies and platforms, so that as they come out of this, they can actually try and do things differently going forward.
Okay, that's really interesting. And that B2B2C that we talked about at the beginning, that now is becoming a lot more clear, and especially with what you're talking about now with the comeback from COVID, and how you actually can deliver solutions to other markets as well, which I think is going to be quite interesting.
And the important thing is, the one reaction is, well, this self-employed people have been damaged, that kills it. It's not. In every recession, self-employment comes to the fore, because people want to work. People will find a way to work, and sometimes self-employment is their way back in, or gig economy, or whatever you want to call it. And we're working on a few projects, which is, well, we're now in this situation where we've got huge numbers of people unemployed or furloughed, or whatever structure we've put them into at the moment, and huge numbers of businesses who just genuinely won't know how many workers they need, and how do we, and the kind of more flexible work will actually potentially creates an opportunity. I'm putting some structures around that, but fundamentally we're working with some platforms. In doing that, let's make sure there's some protections for the workers as well. So it's effectively, it's a term that goes around the UK, but good work. That doesn't necessarily mean it's 9 to 5, but that people get what they want out of work, but they have some protections as well, and kind of trying to build that together so that there's a real opportunity to help both businesses and individuals kind of get going again.
It's amazing. No, I've talked to Ollie Walsh about this. He's the founder of Pipit, Pipit Global out in Galway, and that, he talked about financial inclusion being, it's not a charity, it's a business model, right? And that there is opportunities to use the digital means to bring these services to a level that are accessible to a much wider segment of the population. And that doesn't just have to include those that are in the the independent worker space. That can be a much broader market. So I
think that's an important one. I mean, we talk about it. One of the key things that technology and fintech brings. So why is self-employment so underserved? Because it's complex, it's diverse, it doesn't fit into the two very obvious buckets of you're basically a consumer with a salary, or you're a business with a business plan and all of the normal things a business has. So it just doesn't fit. And even within it, it's hugely varied from your, low and mid-paid cleaners and couriers and people like that, right up to barristers and people like that. So it's just such a varied sector that it was just, we can maybe beat traditional institutions up, but it was just too expensive. They just can't service it. They don't, and therefore the tech allows us to get to a level and a cost of service that allows us to do things just on a fundamentally different, the business model things as well, but you couldn't do it without the more tech delivery method that actually just allows much more focused targeting of particular sectors. And we're very much kind of doing a sector focus, because sectors are very different.
Yep, absolutely. Just shifting gears for a minute, Garrett, when you think about your own journey and how you got to this point, obviously there are going to be some personality traits of yours that have been either helpful or have worked against you to get the business this far. What would some of those be?
I mean, one of the most important is curiosity. Curiosity is the best word I could come up with, but it's not just questioning. It can also be my weakness. So I love doing I love exploring new things. You've examined my LinkedIn. It's an interesting meander through all sorts of everything. So I get a kick out of solving problems and doing new things, and persistent. I mean, start of persistence as well. As much as possible, not taking no for an answer. Obviously, they're both a double-edged sword of becoming unfocused and pig-headed. But I think I suppose what we've tried to do, and that's what's kind of helping, is because, and we're probably much clearer on articulating it now than we would have been 2 years ago or 3 years ago, is this kind of purpose and vision. What are we trying to do? What's our guiding light? And what will help towards that? And push hard kind of towards that. Now, we're usually zigzagging around it, but actually, there's somewhere we want to get to. It's more a particular kind of way we see the world rather than a particular solution. So it's kind of, it evolves as we move, but that gives us effectively almost a North Star, a kind of guiding light of where are we going, does this fit or not. And in reality, when you're in a early-stage startup, sometimes we've got to do this because it'll get us something which might get us closer, even if it is slightly off in the direction. But yeah, it's probably curiosity and kind of just ability to learn new things, because we've got a very broad and complex thing we're trying to do across banking, finance, credit, insurance, non-finance. So just getting my head around all of those things, and also just trying to work with the team I do some customer stuff, but we have a number of the team who talk to customers every day, and just trying to kind of absorb what they're hearing, and trying to pick stuff off it, and then just pushing.
I love it. I mean, it sounds like one really feeds the other, right? And that this curiosity to dig into new topics, to find new things, are naturally going to be driven by your day-to-day activities and the type of business that you're in, and what you actually want to do with the business that you're driving for your customers. And you're going to, because of all that, you're naturally going to start to find, or continue to find, more and more things that are just, oh, wait a minute, this just isn't right. And when it just isn't right from a, human rights violation perspective, that's one thing. But when it's just not right from a financial perspective, a fairness perspective, an equity perspective, that's kind of, not that it's easy to solve, but it's a more accessible problem to solve, right? And I can see how that curiosity, that persistence, everything all adds up there. Who do you lean on for when you just don't know where to go as a sounding board for advice?
Depends, to be honest. I don't have a particular one person. Sometimes it'll be other founders through either here in Dublin or through the kind of Techstars network. Dennis, who you've mentioned, would also be a very kind of steady and kind of wise and kind of counsel in terms of when you're just not sure on things, and sometimes when it's just things are challenging. He'll bring a perspective because he's been part of the development, but not in the operations. So he's able to kind of take a very pragmatic view. But yeah, there's no particular answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
I don't have a confidant that I would go to with everything. So yeah.
Well, you do have a wife.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I was seriously thinking about something a couple of weeks ago even last week, about doing something, not with a stranger, but doing, a piece of work with an individual who I trust to a great extent, for a professional thing. And I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? If I just talk to my wife about this, I might be able to solve the problem because she's pretty sharp, right? So yeah, I found that the wife does help in these situations. Yeah. You mentioned Techstars a couple of times, yeah. And I people speak well of you, Garrett, out there in the market, and that you guys really seem to have, you're on point. And going through that Techstars program, going through, I think, that crowdfunding round that you guys did, I think all of that has really lended itself to you guys being really being able to present yourself well. Is there is my speculation on that right, or was there other things that kind of contributed to this?
To be honest, I don't. It's a nice comment to think we have it all figured out, because we don't. I mean, I suppose probably because of how we got to what we were doing, there was a kind of a realization. So we kind of always had a reasonable framework of what we wanted to do. Having seen some of the B2C as a challenge, so having that kind of framework of partnering was always there. I certainly wouldn't think we've had it all worked out. We're still kind of figuring it out, but I mean, I suppose everything along the way, whether it be we were in NDRC before the NDRC, having to put something like Cedar's campaign together, Techstars, probably one that's probably a little not a little bit lower profile in terms of what we've done is we did some work. We were part of an MIT piece of thing that MIT did. So even in just preparing for that, some of that would have helped kind of better articulate some of the vision and mission and
polish.
And with polish, yeah. So certainly Cedars and things like that, the polish in terms of video and things like that, Techstars in terms of pitching and polish and NDRC, and just getting messaging. I mean, the reality is our message has evolved. I think it's our overall vision hasn't. I suppose it's what actually we talk about now is just much broader. We probably were slower to talk about the ambition we had back early on. But we certainly haven't got it cracked. But yeah, I mean, all of those things add polish, add focus, add just that kind of certainty around what we're trying to do. There's obviously always a danger of getting too tied to it, but so I think that's the best one is just that very broad initially kind of vision around solving broad financial problems for this category, and then over time we've been able to articulate that better and better.
Yeah, and it looks good at the very least, right? So looking ahead, what do you think is the next big hump to get over, and how do you scale beyond the UK with Trezeo?
Well, we've got to scale in the UK first. I mean, really, we're just on, and COVID's come at a good time and a bad time, so we're literally on that kind of inflection point between early community piece, which is B2C. Let's be clear, early community, early members from community, to a number of partnerships we've signed, which should bring us very material scale, and it's going to be making that transition to really activating this B2B2C channel, really proving how it works, and building that kind of flywheel. And really we then want to start driving some of the kind of network effects to the other side of that, because, as I said, the member still becomes our customer, because most of them work for multiple people. So we want to keep that independence so they can manage effectively manage what is a portable protection set that they can move around and not feel tied into the company they work for. So that's getting that cracked and scaling. And then, yes, we probably would have said it was going to be kind of late this year, early next year, we'd start thinking about other markets. COVID is going to delay that a bit, but yeah, it's kind of prioritize where we go after that. Some of that will be driven by us, but I think realistically, all of it will also be driven by the companies we're working with and where it's important to them. So we sporadically have early conversations around that when people are interested, but we're very clear. UK is not. I mean, UK is a big market, but that's not our only ambition. It was just the right scale of market to start in. Being in Ireland meant we could actually kind of do a lot of stuff in the very early days remotely without an entire team on the ground, and then we could start building the team there as we have now.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm a big fan, so I'm pulling for you guys, and I want to see this all happen. Final question: what is one thing that people wouldn't expect to know about you?
I hate these questions. This one particularly. So there's one, I don't know if people know it or not, but maybe this is me having a bit of whatever myself. So I enjoy the water. So I grew up in Lucan. I was with my dad. We'd always have been in or around the water. It was canoed. We were in Wexford a lot. So, but now more recently, in recent years, I do, when I can, a reasonable amount of scuba diving. So the interesting one there, which people might not expect, so people who know me, when you're scuba diving, there's no talking.
Right.
You know me well, will know that's pretty unusual. So it's a real opportunity just to relax. I mean, yes, it's serious and you got to be careful, but you can relax, enjoy it. When you're down there, you're just in a different world, whether it's in off Ducky Island in the Merc or somewhere overseas. But it's just it's just a great way to kind of chill out and get out with a group. But then actually underwater, it's just you got to focus on what's around you. It's and just enjoy it. If you're not relaxed, you end up having much shorter dives, not enjoying the dive. So it's great that. But yeah, no talking either.
I love it. No, I haven't been scuba diving in a while. Like when I lived in Bermuda, I kind of became a bit of a snorkeling snob. and said, I don't need no stinking tanks, right? But right before I left, myself and my buddy Des Johnson, shout out to Des, he's in New York now. He said, Pete, you want to go out? Well, last time before you go. And I said, yeah, it'll be my second time in 6 years in scuba diving to Bermuda. And I got down there. I absolutely loved it. I'm like, what was I missing for the last 5 years?
So the question is, have you done hardcore cold water diving?
Yeah, I got my certification in Back Beach in northern Massachusetts back in 1994. Yeah, it was pretty cold. It was like your face just is in pain exposed to that yes. water. But no, I get that. If you get your buoyancy right with scuba diving, it feels like you're freaking flying.
Exactly.
It's just right. I love it. Cool. Exactly. All right, Garrett. Well, thank you so much. I think on the last, this is an episode where I really learned a lot, and I came into this thinking that I had all the answers, but you showed me that there's a lot more to figure out about Garrett Cassidy and Trezeo. So thank you.
Thank you. No, it was good. It's great to talk through it. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Money never sleeps, pal.
That does it for this week, folks. And thanks to Garrett for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links and show notes for this episode are on moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. Remember, if you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, it is highly advisable that you build a relationship with a team at Top Tier Recruitment as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for editing this podcast. As for me, I increase the odds of startup success. Get in touch through the contact page on noriaventures.com. You can check out what Owen Fitzgerald is up to these days on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps.